This is Ready Set Reiki, a podcast about Reiki, the universal energy life force. From the curious beginner to the seasoned master teacher, welcoming all systems, all lineages, and all levels. Reiki is a journey, not a destination. And on this Ready Set Reiki journey, we refer to ourselves as guides rather than hosts, as we too are traveling, supporting each other, and learning on this Reiki journey as well. And with that said, I am your first guide, Tracy Searight.
And I'm your second guide, Millie Pampina.
And today I am so honored to have one of my teachers that I learned animal Reiki from. And this is Pamela Allen LeBlanc. What a powerhouse of knowledge right here. So excited. She is an ICRT, which is a licensed Reiki Master Teacher and an Assistant Director of the ICRT. She has a BSc in Agriculture and an MBA and teaches online and in person Holy Fire 3 Reiki classes, ICRT Animal Reiki classes, and Animal Communication in Canada, the United States, Australia, and in England. Pamela has authored several articles in the Reiki News magazine, co-authored the ICRT Animal Reiki course, and leads the popular Reiki from the Farm podcast. Her new book, The Reiki Business Book, is available on Amazon and most book retailers in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia. She teaches Reiki business classes with her daughter for people interested in diving in deeper and is currently working on an animal communication book and expanding her animal communication classes. Pam lives in Canada with her husband, Pierre, 12 horses, and 5 dogs. She can be contacted by email or through her website. And what is interesting about Pam is that Reiki has led her to politics. So let's just dive right in here. So, Pamela, welcome to Ready Set Reiki.
Thank you, Tracy. It's so nice to be here. And Millie, I appreciate it.
Wonderful. So, we're going to get started. And our first question is, tell us about yourself.
Oh gosh. So I'm not a natural Reiki person in a sense because science is my background and business, and that's where things were going. But when I ran into some health trouble that the doctors and medical establishment couldn't help me with, I really was at a loss, and somebody offered a Reiki session. And I wasn't healed immediately or anything, but but I felt much better right away, and I was intrigued. I needed to know more. And so we traded back and forth for quite a while until she wasn't a Reiki instructor, she was a level 2 practitioner, till I finally met my instructor. And then the rest was history. But what's really interesting when I look back at my whole story of how everything unfolded, I realized that my horses really led me to Reiki. I have been working with horses all my life since I was about 10 years old, so for about 45 years now. And they introduced Reiki to me. It was one of my students that offered a Reiki session. It was an animal communicator who came to speak with the herd, even when I wasn't sure if I believed in that. That became my Reiki instructor when I couldn't afford to go to and here's another thing that's kind of interesting. I never wanted to teach. I
Mm.
only wanted to work with animals. And but when I couldn't afford to go to England and study at the master level, um, somebody sent me a check out of the blue that was just $10 difference than the price of the class for a horse that I had trained for them as a favor when the horse sold, they actually sent me half of the money and insisted that I keep it. And I was actually in a position where I couldn't afford a Reiki class at that time, but it just horses always have made everything miraculously happen for me. So I feel very blessed and very lucky.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I recall when I had the animal Reiki training with you, that you said, just do it and the money will show up. Just trust it and go forward with it. And somehow, even if you could only pay like a portion of it, just go forward boldly, knowing that the money will arrive. So,
Yeah, I think you kind of have to believe in yourself, and I didn't believe in myself
right,
at the
right,
time.
right.
I I mispronounced my own name when I met William Rand for three
I remember
times. I told him I was Pam Ellen LeBlanc and Pam Ellen LeBlanc, and then you actually say my name, Pam Ellen LeBlanc. And when I finally got the name right, I just said, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Rand. I don't know why I did that. I'm just so nervous to be here." And he said, "Why are you nervous?" And I didn't even think as an empath, we recognize truth, but we're also very truthful without giving it much thought. And so I just blurted out, because Reiki masters are wonderful and amazing people, and I'm just me. And he said, and I'm just me, I'm glad that you're here. But I was very intimidated, you know, to take the class, but everything lines up as it's supposed to with the teacher, with the finances. And looking back, Tracy, it's the best investment I've ever
Oh,
made in myself. I was struggling financially at the time.
yes.
I was doing business consulting, but the economy had taken a hit, and um I was really struggling financially, and technically I probably shouldn't have spent that money on that Reiki
Sure.
course, but it was the best investment ever. When I came back and just started teaching Reiki, a side effect was that financially everything worked out. And I don't know, I'm so grateful for the gift that is Reiki.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you answered a little bit of this question. So when it comes down to it, we found a little bit about how Reiki came into your life. So would you say that you found Reiki or Reiki found you?
It definitely found me, but I have to say, I really feel my horses made it happen. They brought the first Reiki practitioner, the first session with one of my horseback riding students. They um, brought my teacher, my first teacher, when it was time to learn more. And I really wanted to learn more because I wanted to help animals more. My teacher actually had attuned my horses to Reiki. And I noticed that that was so positive for them and made such a big difference for them that I wanted that for some of the other horses that I trained. But when I asked her, she said no. She said it was for me to do. So I knew I had to go on, and they helped me afford going on. They actually created the opportunity for my first article with the Reiki News magazine, and that made me a writer. And it just, the horses really have guided just about every
I love
step. And
that.
I
I love
find
that.
that people's animals bring them to Reiki, which is
It
wonderful.
does. It does.
Yeah.
I have a student that had a dog that we would talked about this when I trained with you about the
Yeah.
dog over at the border. So it's
Yeah.
amazing how Luna loves her name has guided, my student in a way too. So
I love it.
amazing. I love that. So you've been on this journey for a while and you've had a wonderful ride, and you've been able to teach many students and be mentors to someone in the ICRT program.
I really have.
That has
And
been
that's been amazing that I've
that's
mentored two students in China, one in Hong Kong and one who teaches in mainland China. And actually, they just sent me a picture this morning. They're both in Melbourne, Australia today. So they finally got to meet in person, which is exciting.
wonderful. So, with all that you have been out in the world with this, what do you find is a common misperception about this work? And it can be animal communication as well as Reiki.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few that I'm got a few more came to mind and that I'm guided to mention. When I first started teaching Reiki in 2011, people were very frightened of it. They would when they found out that you were a Reiki practitioner, they'd almost, make the sign of the witch and back away or something like that. And but I do notice that now so many more people are open to it. It's been a big difference. But one common misperception I've noticed that has carried through is that it's against religion, or that like if you do Reiki, it it won't mesh with your religion. And actually, Reiki isn't a religion. It is a spiritual path. But it blends with every religion. And so I did a series on my own podcast, Reiki from the Farm, that where we talked to some people from different religions who followed the goddess religion and Judaism and Christianity and Catholicism versus Protestantism and Muslim. And I'm still looking for some people from Taoism and some of the other religions, Zoroastrianism, and so on, to interview. But everybody said that regardless of their religion, Reiki just fit in seamlessly and kind of helped them experience their religion even more. So that's a definitely a common misconception. And I know I probably just from where I live, I hear it more from the standpoint of Christianity. But I notice that the ICRT even has written articles that you can look for on their website, reiki.org, about Reiki and Christianity and how it goes together. So if that's something that your listeners ever have to explain to people, that can be a nice resource.
Yeah.
But another thing is that it isn't science-based, that there is no science behind it. And when we look at Reiki, yes, it was spiritual, 100%. It came in as a spiritual energy, a spiritual tradition. But right away, Dr. Hayashi began adding science to Reiki. And now we have the Center for Reiki Research. And if anybody wants to check them out, it's centerforreikiresearch.org. And they are just keeping track of some of the many scientific studies that have been done um, on Reiki and the results that they're getting. And we know that it's got to be effective because it's being used in more than 800 hospitals in the United States. Um, so that's kind of for me, I had to do a little work around how does this mesh with science? And I found that actually it it's it follows the laws of physics. It 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 meshes with science incredibly well, no matter which angle you're looking at it from. If you're looking at it from a biology standpoint, then you can look at some of the experiments that have been done biologically on improvements to health and so on. If you're looking at it from astrophysics, there's a tremendous amount of evidence there. So that's the other thing I think is the fact that, that it's airy fairy and it's not, it's real. I integrate it in every area of my life. And if it didn't work, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't, I'm
Right.
not a person to waste my time.
Right.
So
Right. Right. And that's why I seem to gravitate, to William Rand with that because you have the evidence based. He
yeah,
does have it where at the retreat I was able to attend virtually, but they had them get up and talk about these are some of the journals that
yeah,
we found. We have a committee. Jules Davis got up and talked about legislation. So he's bringing all of these pieces in. Even the World Peace Reiki, the grid has all the religions, right, on it to send that. So it's very mindful and very thoughtful to incorporate all of this into it in one resource. So that's what I like about it, that you can go on the webpage and you can go a little bit deeper and get this information that's backed up. Things are cited. Here we can reference this. We found this information about, you know, uh, uh, Master Azui about, this. We can back it up. So that's what I like about it.
I love that too. And yeah, and Reiki has been, there have been a lot of Reiki experiments in medical journals. Now, Dr. Baldwin with the Center for Reiki Research, she does help people set up experiments so that, they can have their double-blind studies, they can have um their group, what is it called? The sham group. Like,
Yeah.
she helps them set it up so that the experiments are legitimate and are irrefutable. And
Exactly.
so yeah, no, I agree. I love that, Trace.
Love that. So our next question is, what is something everybody in this industry should stop doing?
They should stop doubting themselves. I think that's the biggest thing, and I'm probably the worst one for that, Tracy. Like I used to pray to the goddess. I had a little bit of time where I couldn't use the word God and I have been religious, I am spiritual. That is a word that I do use now, but we also um that's the other thing we could stop doing is judging. We also in the ICRT, part of our principles are, a belief in a higher power, regardless of the name you choose to call it. And you can be an atheist and do Reiki, as long as you believe in the weather or the universe or, whatever. But I was so skeptical and so doubtful of myself. I would say every time I did Reiki, I for more than a year, I would say, Goddess, if something happened, please give me a sign. And I would get a sign that you couldn't ignore, that was irrefutable, until one day I heard, daughter, I have given you 386 signs. It is time for you to have some faith. So I realized that was true. And I realized that one of the biggest things, I did a podcast with Karen Keg recently on imposter syndrome because every single one of us gets into this. And well, everyone I've met anyway, and it's so magical. And it creates these miracles. And I can remember driving my first Reiki teacher crazy, like, Ellen, this miracle just happened. And she'd say, yeah. And I'd be like, why? You know, like, how? I couldn't wrap my head around how or why. And but it happened. So you couldn't, it was irrefutable. And so many of us sort of feel too small to have been the vessel to have facilitated that, but we're not. We're magnificent. So if we could just stop doubting ourselves, have more confidence in ourselves. And for me, I had to stop doubting Reiki. I really, it took me a long time to become really confident, both in myself and in Reiki. So that's one thing, if we could just stop doubting ourselves and just try it
Right.
and let go of any expectation of results, like just allow the result to be what it needs to be, but just try it, and the outcome is usually beyond your expectations.
Absolutely. Just trust the process.
Trust the process. Yeah,
Yeah.
trust. That's a good
Trust
word.
the process. So our next question is, what do you wish your younger self knew about this current profession?
Well, first of all, I just wish I didn't get into Reiki until I was in my 40s. And I look back at all the angst and health problems and things that I experienced in my 20s. And I wish my younger self had known about Reiki then,
Right.
so that I could have had it longer. But I do think that the journey is divinely ordered. Um, and so the biggest thing I wish in my journey, it really took me a long time to bring business principles into my Reiki practice. Like, and I still can tend to be a little bit unorganized at times. I tend to do a few too many things and miss a step here and there. But it took me years to get comfortable putting business and Reiki together. And I have an MBA. And before I was had my own business and businesses, I guess I have four businesses. I was incredibly successful as a senior vice president with another business for 7 years, and I was incredibly successful with the government as well, coaching businesses before that. So I know a lot about business. I mean, and yet it was really difficult for me to put business and Reiki together. And in fact, that sort of came to a head as I became a licensed teacher. It's about a 3-year process and about 1,000 hours of additional training. And I had Colleen Benally as my mentor, and she was very clear with me, like, you have to get over these hangups of yours. You know what to do from a business standpoint, and you're not doing it. And that is causing people to lose out on learning Reiki. And the people that maybe could use Reiki in their lives because you're not marketing yourself, you're not advertising yourself. My website said under construction for 2 years, just to give you, and I've designed websites for other people, in a week. So things like that. So when I finally got over my hangups and put Reiki and business together, um, it was fantastic. People, my classes were fuller. People enjoyed the interaction with the other students. They enjoyed the bigger classes. It all came together. But when I was in England, just in March of 2020, and we all know what happened then, I was actually in England as they were closing borders and and closing airports and canceling flights, and COVID was happening, and it was brand new. Nobody knew what it was. I just taught a Reiki class there. And in fact, at the last minute, everybody dropped out of the class. Um, and I was grateful because when I first went over to teach the class, it was a Wednesday, and I was teaching it the Saturday, Sunday, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, COVID," and nobody thought it was that big of a deal. Thursday, the announcement came Thursday evening that the borders were going to close and so on. And so I did stay and teach my friend Reiki on the weekend, the friend that was hosting it. And I'm grateful that I did. It made a huge difference in his life. And then I had him, and my husband was going to meet me over there, and we were planning a holiday. So he was coming at the end of the weekend, so he decided not to come. And Monday I went back to the airport, but I was really overwhelmed because there is something that Shelley Kammermeyer and Colleen Benelli, I've heard them say, which is, I believe that every family needs Reiki. Every family needs to have a Reiki practitioner in it. And I was just looking at the Heathrow Airport when COVID was brand new, just at the panic and chaos around me, Tracy and Millie. And I I said, "Oh my God, they're right. Every family does need a Reiki practitioner." But I was overwhelmed. I was like, "I'm just one teacher. What can I do?" And I heard very clearly, um, you have an MBA, you're in a position of leadership as an ICRT licensed teacher. And not only that, but you have an MBA and you're a successful businesswoman, and you still had a hard time creating your Reiki business. Imagine people who don't have that. And I said, "Oh, that's right." And I heard very clearly that I was to teach the teachers, and then the Reiki business book came from that. So, but I wish it hadn't taken me so long to to get comfortable putting the business principles together with Reiki. When I look back at it and really think about that, I'm not sure why, but a lot of us struggle with that. And we don't feel worthy sometimes, or we don't feel we know enough, or we don't feel we have the time or the skills or I don't know, or we feel we have to have a space when maybe we could teach out of our home, or whatever, or maybe we can't teach out of our home and there is a space that we could have, but we haven't looked into it. But for a lot of reasons, a lot of us try to keep those two apart. And I don't know that they need to be. I know that they don't need to be kept apart, because how did Yasui share Reiki? Through a business. How did Hayashi share Reiki? With a business. How did Takata share Reiki? With a business. All of them. Like, it's historically,
Yes.
that's that's a common denominator. And I've had a look at it and I've realized, oh, that's a really practical way to share it because we can have different religions, different cultures, different ideas, different ideals, but we all understand business. So this is a very practical way. I wish I'd known that. And I wish it hadn't taken me like 9 or 10 years to figure it out.
Right, right. But it's very relatable to everyone who's on this journey. They doubt
Yeah.
themselves. They have that imposter syndrome. You know, if I take that one more class, if I take this one more training, if I get this one more modality, it's going to help me, you know, and that is why I just like, okay, I got to just stop the trainings and just go out and teach, right? You got to go and have these
Yeah.
experiences as well and say, okay, you know, instead of me taking this additional thing, I'm going to go and I'm going to just teach a class.
You're teaching now and you're
Yeah,
doing amazing. And
thank you.
as you teach, you're spreading Reiki in the world, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I'm seeing that I'm, you know, training other teachers. I think that's supposed to be what I'm supposed to do as well, you know, with that.
Yes.
But you'll find your purpose somewhere in this.
Yeah, it might be as a healer, it might be as a
Yeah.
teacher. It might be, I know the last chapter of my book is, it might not be starting a practice like we have
Yeah.
done. It
Yeah.
might be incorporating Reiki into your art or into your law firm or into your government
Of
work or into
course.
your
Of course.
accounting.
Of
Yeah,
course.
I love
And
that.
yeah. And William Rand probably never knew that he was going to do holy fire. And
No,
you think that, you know, Kid Reiki now is happening. They probably never knew when they started their journey. Kid Reiki? My goodness. We interviewed someone last week. Lotus Reiki was on her journey. She created that. So you
amazing.
never know where it's going to take you.
I didn't know that I was going to be creating animal Reiki,
Of
you know, that
course.
along with my co-authors. And I didn't know the book. I didn't know the podcast. You really don't, you really don't know
Right.
where
Right.
it's going. And just recently, Tracy, you don't even know this, but I submitted my book proposal to Hay House for animal communication,
Great.
and I was a runner-up in their contest. So they've invited me to submit it again, and
Nice.
I'll publish the book, whether it goes through Hay House or
Sure.
not,
Sure.
but it might go through Hay House. Who knows?
Never
I
know.
actually received the email that said you were a runner-up in the contest, and I didn't notice my name in it. I deleted the email. And it wasn't until they reached out afterward and said, "Hey, we're sending all the runner-ups feedback. Here, we'd like you to resubmit, and here, here's the direction we'd like you to take, and a few things you could do differently, and you might get a contract the next time." And I was like, holy jumpins. I didn't even notice my name. I found it in the deleted file. There's my name, there's my book, and you don't and now Reiki's taking me into politics. I had no idea that would happen. And but William Rand says that. He says if I had known where Reiki was taking me, I probably would have stopped the journey because I wouldn't have felt that it was possible.
That's beautiful.
He's
Yeah, he does say that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because it would have been overwhelming. You're getting the information as you need it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you would have thought it wasn't possible. He was very shy. He didn't think he would ever be able to teach.
Right, right.
He had to get over that, and Reiki
Yeah.
helped him.
Yeah.
And now he teaches all around the world, 50, 60, 70 people in a class sometimes.
Exactly. That's what I use as his example when people tell me. I use two examples. I used him about how when he first taught the Holy Fire and he got overwhelmed and he left that circle. And then
Yeah.
I also like to bring in an example, believe it or not, Jim Morrison from The Doors used to sing with his back turned to the crowd because he was too embarrassed to face the crowd. So look at
You're
that.
kidding.
Yeah, in the early days, he couldn't even face, and they would say turn around, and he couldn't do it. So look at that, two examples of people that really, when they came into their purpose, they
Yeah,
shined.
it's
Yeah,
Sean.
they got to get out of their own way.
I agree. Yeah, that's it. Get out of your own way. That's a
Yeah,
good. I had to get out of my own way. I can't tell you how many
for
times I was the
sure,
biggest
for
barrier.
sure, for sure. So our next question is, what are some qualities that you look for in a Reiki practitioner?
I one of the things about Reiki energy and Reiki practitioners is everybody's energy feels a little different. And I really like practitioners. I have a really bold, like kind of in your face energy. I actually like practitioners that are the opposite, that have that really soft, gentle energy. And I actually don't like necessarily to mix modalities. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I go to see a Reiki practitioner every month from a different lineage than mine, which I love. She has that beautiful soft energy, and she does mix in cranial sacral and reflexology. But I don't like to mix like the intuitive arts. If I would like a psychic reading, I have specific people I like to go to for those. So I actually kind of like a session that's really quiet and gentle and oh, I love that. And I also have a session once a month with my mentor, Colleen Benelli, because there aren't a lot of people around that have more experience than Reiki in Reiki than I have right now.
Right, right. And she would be the one.
And she's
Absolutely.
the one, like herself. And I also spend time with William Rand and Karen Harrison
Yes.
and Jill Teal. And you know, they all mentor me. So that's, but I do a regular session with Colleen once a month. And in addition to tapping into the energy, that way, if I, and that's a totally different type of session. I'm not on a table, I'm not, it's online. And in that session, I can ask for advice. And so I really like having a session with somebody with that much experience because I can say, you know, this is happening. And by doing 2 sessions a month, I find I never move into crisis. It just sort of keeps me continually moving forward. And, you know, and if I have questions, like I had a lot of questions about, gosh, Reiki is asking me to go into politics. What's that going to look like? How am I going to fit that in and stuff like that. So those that helped me through.
Wonderful. So, with all of your mentors and all of the learning that you're doing, what advice would you give someone who is just starting out in this profession?
Mm, there's so many directions that I could take that. But the biggest thing I think is just practice. I tell my level 1 and 2 practitioners, it's so much fun teaching a level 1 and 2 class, isn't it?
It is.
You know, people are brand new and I love it. And I always tell them, practice on everything that will hold still. If it will hold still for you, practice on it. Practice on trees. If you get a sense that they want Reiki, I actually ask the tree, would you like Reiki? And I have some trees that are like, no, thanks. And other trees that say, sure. And practice on plants, practice on animals if they want it. It's, you know, it's their choice. Practice on children, practice on friends, family. Like just practice, practice, practice because you do tend to doubt it at first. Like it's
Mhm.
a little bit too, it almost feels impossible. Like, how is it possible that this magic energy is just flowing through me that can heal cancer, you know,
Right, right,
and stuff like that. But as you practice, you'll gain confidence. So
right,
I think that's the biggest thing is
right.
just do whatever you need to do to gain confidence and
Yeah,
practice developing your own style. That's important.
yeah. I tell my students you need to cultivate a relationship with it, the energy, like you're
Yeah.
dating it or courting it,
Yeah.
same
Well,
time.
actually, that's right, Tracy. And the first person you have to practice on is yourself, like every
Exactly,
day.
because that's
That's the
why you
first
need that
priority.
relationship. Yeah, you have to cultivate that relationship with it because that's what it has to be with first. So then you can be of service to others, right? Right.
And you know,
Like
one of
Buddha
the th
says, yeah, you have
yeah,
to help me to heal myself so I can be of service to
yeah.
myself and others. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that. Guide me and heal me so I may be of
yeah.
service to myself and others. And you
That's
know, one of the best things I liked, one of the things that really helped me in my relationship with Reiki was listening to Reiki chants. There's about a 15-minute chant of each of the four Yusui symbols.
sure,
And so I would just, and you just don't listen to the fourth one if you're level 2, just listen to the
sure,
first
sure.
three.
Yeah,
But you can't hear the name of the symbol.
right,
I chant it over and over, but I would
right.
just say, today I'm going to work with the power symbol. And I would
Sure.
put that chant on and just get to know the power symbol better. And I
Yeah,
love doing it
yeah,
a symbol at a
yeah.
time.
Yeah, Jonathan Goldman
Yes,
chants the notes, I think, right?
that's
Yes,
it. Jonathan Goldman and
I
Laurel
play his
Fontagaya.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I play that all the time as I'm cleaning the house. When I was at the yoga studio before students came, I would turn it on and I would sweep and I would remember your little Reiki trails that you taught us as I'm, sweeping the floor and walking so that from the entrance all the way to the studio. So see how that sinks in with your students. So we listen.
I'm so proud. I'm a proud mama.
There you go. All right, so our next one, I think I can guess what book, but what books do you recommend?
You know, I do love the Reiki business book. I put my heart and soul in it, but I want to tell you something funny about it is I would go back and read it afterward and I'd be like, this is really good. I wonder who wrote that. Like it
I
didn't, I had
remember like it
no,
channeled it. Yeah, it comes up in all the Reiki
yeah.
trainings that I do. So when I retook all my trainings for qualification for the ICRT program and it came up in the different classes. So the
Oh,
teachers are
thank
out
you.
there recommending it and
Oh,
and encouraging students to get the book. So,
oh, thank you. It just, there isn't enough time in class to go into the details around starting a business. Like we have to cover it fairly quickly because there's so much else to cover. So yeah, this is of course I will. But another book that I often recommend to people is Anne Baldwin's book, Reiki and Clinical Practice. So I get a lot of people, sciencey people, and left brain thinkers in my classes and people that can even be skeptical because I was skeptical. You attract the students that are the most like you. And so those are people that I get. And Dr. Baldwin wrote a wonderful book on Reiki and clinical practice, which I appreciate. And I just got her brand new book, The Vagus Nerve in Therapeutic Practice. So just different ways to incorporate the vagus nerve in with Reiki and just in therapy and to help people. So those are a couple that I often recommend. And there's this, it's an older book, but there is a book from 2012 that the ICRT sells, which is it's I think 80 different hospital programs, Reiki hospital programs, and kind of how they were set up, and also a summary of some of the peer-reviewed research up until then. It's hopefully that's something that they'll consider updating, but
sure.
in the meantime, that's something that I often recommend it as well.
Wonderful. So, let our listeners know your classes that you offer and where they can find you.
Oh, thank you. You can find me at reikifromthefarm.com. And I offer level one and two, licensed level one and two Reiki classes, which just means that when you're a licensed teacher, and if you do decide you'd like to become a member of the ICRT Reiki Membership Association, when you take both level one and two and masters from a licensed teacher, you can become a professional member if you would like. And it's not necessary to become a professional member, but it is one of the steps in becoming a licensed teacher. And some people like to do that. I also teach animal Reiki level one and two, and I teach animal communication. I've had so far, up till now, I've had a level one and two class, but in March of this year, I plan to expand that into a level three practitioner and a master class so that other people can teach animal communication. My friend Tracy Sullivan explained to me that currently most people from her practice of human design, which she integrates with Reiki at times, currently most people on the planet are nine-centered beings,
Mm,
nine chakra or centered beings. It's
yeah.
a little bit of a different way of thinking about it. But she said we're evolving to 11 chakra beings. And one of the aspects of being an 11 chakra being is being able to hear the animals. And she sort of felt that perhaps some of us were already 11 chakra beings with our ability to hear the animals, and we were kind of hauling people along with us. And so along with that, I had been getting, a tap on the shoulder. You need to write that book. You need to develop that further. You need to teach more people. Like, because as we teach the teachers, as our students can become teachers, they teach students that can become teachers, and there's a real spreading of that process. So that's those are the classes. And then my daughter and I teach some Reiki business courses. And on December 28th, I have a teaching people how to set their goals for the new year and set them in a balanced way, and then how to achieve them. Do it, dream it, goal setting course. And then in January, I have some additional animal courses, like how to use energy to get a better connection with your animals, and also explaining the death and dying process with animals and kind of how they feel about it and helping us heal our grief. And I also have a 3-week marketing class with my daughter. It's just 3 Monday evenings. They're very intensive. It's 10 hours, but we give you everything we have learned to try to save people time and money with with marketing their businesses. So those are some of the things that I have coming up. I've got a full lineup of classes in January and February, and I guess also Karuna Reiki then.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you have a
Yeah.
podcast as well, right?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
name of the podcast.
The name of the podcast is Reiki from the Farm, and it's on 21 different podcast providers. So
Wonderful.
everything from Spotify and Apple iTunes to Google
Right.
Play and Zencaster and all of these. So,
Beautiful, beautiful.
and it also goes live once a week on my YouTube channel.
Beautiful. And then on reiki.org as well, they can find all of your information.
That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This ends our part of our journey. So I'm going to hand you over to my co-guide, Millie Pampina, who has some social media questions for you. So, Millie?
Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Pam. Such a pleasure to see you again. I've enjoyed some of your lectures and talks at the retreat I attended, and to have you here is such a pleasure and an honor. I especially like the discussion that you and Tracy were having about the imposter syndrome. I certainly myself suffer from
Oh,
that quite a bit.
Millie,
And I'm very
you're
fortunate.
not alone. I think we all did.
Yeah. I'm fortunate to have Tracy to always push me along there. So the as she explained, we have 3 social media questions. I'm just hoping my Reiki rascals here will remain calm. They're getting all excited about something. Maybe they know that they have a kindred spirit in you here. I also studied with Colleen Benelli, and I did my 1-2 and my 3rd level with Colleen, and it was such a pleasure meeting her and
Amazing.
sharing that experience. So, uh, and again, the rascals are getting all excited here. So
I
maybe
do
it's
tend to get animals a little hyper at times. I apologize, guys.
yeah, usually they remain pretty calm, but they just perked up.
Not today.
So well, moving forward, Tracy, she goes to our audience, our viewing audience, and our folks on Facebook and social media, and she asks them to submit questions regarding our podcast guests. And she takes those and she boils them down into 3 that we have. We obviously receive more. So she's challenged with picking out the ones that are most relevant. But we try to answer everybody's questions. And the first one I have for you is, and I have somebody here just so happy she's sitting on me.
Yes. Maybe with your permission, I'll send her some distance Reiki as I answer the question.
Yeah, she is particularly, they're both particularly sensitive to it, and I'm so happy. So and they're both attuned. They have their animal Reiki attunements. So they're good, faithful, that's why I call my Reiki rascals. So but the cats not so much, the dogs, yes. So So with that in mind, our first question is, I am new to Reiki. Can you tell me about distance Reiki healing? There you go. And
Yeah.
how it works.
I was so glad that you guys chose that question because I almost gave up Reiki after level 2 because I couldn't understand distance Reiki. And my mind is very scientific, very, driven to understand how things work, why they work that way. That's just how I'm made up. And when I couldn't figure out, like, I'm like, do you mean that somebody across the planet can send me Reiki and I can feel it? I just looked at my hands and decided I must be making this up. It must not be real because I just couldn't logically compute that that was a possibility. And so I did give it up for about a week right after I learned Reiki level 2. And it's interesting that I gave it up because in the meantime, I had healed these medical issues with Reiki that I had. My horses were attuned to Reiki. We were noticing a huge difference in some of their personalities, in how they interacted with their students. Like I had so much evidence that Reiki was real, but the distance symbol and the fact that distance Reiki could happen really threw me for a loop. And so I read somewhere, you're not going to understand how distance Reiki works because it's not linear. And the human mind tends to like a linear explanation, like we tend to be able to follow along linearly. It's not linear. So the suggestion was instead of wasting your time trying to figure out how it works, why don't you try it and see if it works? Now, as a scientist, I could get behind that. Um, as a scientist, we do that all the time. We're like, we don't know if this works. Let's do an experiment and see if it works. And then, you don't ever have to figure out how it works if you can prove that it does work. And so that's just the scientific method. So I was able to try a distance session with someone. It was somebody who'd actually injured herself in a riding lesson. And I couldn't send it to her at 8 o'clock at night like I intended because we had some unexpected company. I couldn't send it until 10. And she specifically was expecting it at 8, didn't feel anything at 8. She specifically felt it starting at 10. And so um, we don't exactly know how the distance symbol works, but it does work, and distance Reiki does work. And so as I did then some additional research, I discovered that actually the distance symbol works in accordance with the rules of physics, which talk about time and space and matter and E equals MC squared. So I was able to find sort of something to back it up, even though I never was able to get my mind to understand how it works. And then I had an opportunity to practice distance Reiki on, well, probably thousands of occasions at this point, and just consistently get evidence that it was working, 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 working. I just got an email from a client that I saw at a distance yesterday, and he just messaged me like he's overwhelmed with how much better that he feels. I had a client with terminal cancer that I worked with regularly every week at a distance. And then she studied the classes at a distance because it was all during COVID. And they can't find any evidence of cancer anywhere in her body now, not in her bones, nowhere. They call her no evidence of disease. So I just was able to consistently figure out that it works. And with that in mind, so then we realize that distance Reiki works, and then we do still have some people wondering, well, how do distant classes work? How can you send me Reiki in the podcast, but I actually feel it? How can we do a class and I'll actually receive Reiki? And it's along the same principles. And in fact, if anybody's really interested in how distance classes work and sort of how William Rand, the president of the ICRT, was guided to start distance classes, I do have a podcast about that can go into more detail. But once again, I didn't think distance classes would work and they're amazing. If anything, I think they work even better than in person because you can truly relax into the experience without having to worry about the person sitting next to you. And yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question, Millie, but that's where I had to come to because I could never quite figure out how it worked, only that it does.
Thank you. No, I think that's an honest reply. You know,
Okay.
frequently we feel a need not only one to have an answer, but to have some kind of an explanation um, as to, how we came to that conclusion. And sometimes, the real answer is in the did it work? Not how it worked, but did it work? And if it worked, keep using it. That's what I always tell the kids, you know, if it works, do it.
For a little while, my kids pushed Reiki away and pushed me away. And it was years later I found out they were doing Reiki on themselves every evening, every night in bed, even though they were rolling their eyes anytime I mentioned Reiki. And I said, why were you doing Reiki even when you were giving me a hard time about it? And they said, because it worked. It made us feel better. But yes, if it works, do it.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I came by my Reiki training during the COVID pandemic times. And so everything that I had was distant at
Right.
those times. And I honestly still feel far more relaxed when I deliver a distance healing session than when I do it in person because I'm in my own element. It's quiet. I, can focus right there and then on the individual and, or the situation or whatever's presented to me. And I just really enjoy that. So, and I got a long distance attunement this week. And it was funny because they said to me, how did that feel? And I said, well, interestingly enough, my feet were very, very warm. And they said, we were guided to direct the energy
To your feet.
at your feet. And I'm like, I found that odd because it was basically an upper
Yeah.
chakra and above attunement. And my feet were just like, okay. And I was, I caught it. I guess they put it out there and I got it. So like I said, it works. And
Yeah.
my favorite thing about it is it just works. So thank you. And I also say to people, and I know you probably have run across this with some of your answers to our, what people don't believe about what we do is you pray, that you pray. There's no atheists in foxholes. People are praying out there. And where's that going? How is that being received? How are the individuals being prepared and saved by that? So I sense that it's the same.
Very much the same. And one thing that Colleen Benelli has pointed out to me with Reiki, we have a way to receive the answer
Mhm.
and direct it, with
Yeah,
and the answer to our prayers.
yeah.
So
Believe in yourself. I think that's so important. Okay, so our second one is if someone wants to get started with Reiki, where should they begin? How would they find a reputable practitioner?
there's a lot of ways to start. There's an expression in Reiki that the teacher doesn't find the student finds the teacher that they're supposed to study with. And so sometimes you can just start with your immediate friends or family. Like, is there somebody who teaches Reiki that you already know and that you're already close with and that you already enjoy? Um, Maybe there's someone that you listen to on a podcast like you guys, or or my podcast or on YouTube who teaches, and maybe you feel really connected with them or drawn to them. Maybe they're meant to be your teacher. But you can also go on the ICRT. If you like the ICRT like we do, on their website, reiki.org, you can actually go in and just put your zip code or your postal code into reiki.org, and it will show you who teaches from this lineage in your community. And so you can, or in your state or whatever. And of course, now with online classes, you can really study with whoever you want. So you can go through and just find out, who's close to you that teaches. And from that, you can search licensed teachers like myself. There's only about 40 of us in the world. It's a pretty big commitment, but you can also search for professional members of the ICRT Reiki Membership Association, and you can also search for affiliate members. And anybody who's teaching in that lineage has agreed to follow the ICRT Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice. So you might just meet somebody and find out they're a Reiki master and be drawn to them. You might find that there's somebody in your friends and family group, but you don't necessarily want to study with them. My mother was telling me the other day that she plans to go study Reiki with somebody else, not me. And I thought that was adorable. And also sometimes it's a good idea not to study with somebody you're too close with. But those are some places people can start. And you can also do a search online and look at people's websites. What a lot of people say is that when they see somebody's picture, they just have a knowing that that's who they're supposed to study with. And I think follow your gut instinct of
Yeah,
who you're meant to study with.
beautiful. Sound advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And our third question here is, what is the most rewarding part of your passion?
So a long time ago, I sat down with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And to say that I was a type A personality is probably an understatement. I was probably type A plus and, that sort of thing. And I made a mission statement for myself. And I realized that the mission statement was that I wanted to make a difference in the world. And and that was it. Like I wanted to make a difference. I wanted me being here to somehow bring something positive to the world. And I didn't know what it was or anything. I just knew that I wanted to make a difference. What I'm finding is that Reiki is helping me to do that. Every time I teach a class, you watch those students just blossom and eventually come into their power. And that is so rewarding. With the book, people read that and they start their own businesses and they become teachers, and maybe they get financial independence, or maybe they just love doing healing work, or maybe they volunteer, like however they're guided to use it, they really come into their life path and life purpose. So the most rewarding part for me is watching people come into their own life path and purpose and then making a difference. And I feel that even with politics, I really resisted that when Reiki said that that was something I needed to do. And I plan to do both simultaneously. Like I'm still going to teach Reiki. I've been very upfront with everybody. I might be a politician, but I'm still going to teach Reiki and run my businesses, even though I have some people helping me. And I know that I need the Reiki in order to be a better politician, that I need to spend that time in the energy in sessions, in classes, and so on. But I feel like even as a politician, I'm going to be able to be applying Reiki maybe in an area where it hasn't existed that much up until now, and I'll be able to make a difference. And maybe I'll be able to help even more people blossom and grow. So just being able to witness people's journey as they start their own podcasts like you guys have, and really and start teaching and really come into themselves. Oh, I can't get enough of that. It just makes me all tingly inside.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. And in my mind, the essence of, why I know that I became involved in this, um, and I was a regular Reiki client, so I believed in the results of it enough to know that I wanted to take it even the next step. So, but thank you so much. You know, as we've been talking and discussing and going through all these wonderful thoughts and practices and timelines, is there anything else that you might want to bring forward to our audience?
Oh my gosh. I can't, you guys did such a great job on the questions. I just want to say thank you to you. I think what you're doing is spreading more Reiki on the planet as well. And I think that every one of us, I'm getting shivers, every one of us, as we it takes a lot of courage to get out there and to do a podcast, to start your business, to teach that first class. It's terrifying to teach your first class. I was terrified. I don't know anybody who's not terrified to teach the first class. It really takes a lot of courage to step out of your comfort zone and do these new things. So I just want to acknowledge you and all of your listeners who are doing that, who are stepping out of their comfort zone, who are have the courage and the bravery to say, would you like to try a Reiki session, or may I send you Reiki? Um, you know, you're making such a huge difference on the planet. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you. It's mentors and those who have basically blazed the trail ahead of us that have been so helpful. And, that's a big purpose behind why we do this podcast, was to bring resources and connections and networking and all those great things to people so they had choices and
Yeah.
had good ways to make good solid decisions and had a little more realistic view of what the opportunities were and why people were engaged in it. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, Pam, again, highly appreciate. I hope all goes well. I'll be looking forward to hearing more about your political career as well. And
Thank you.
can't wait to see you at another one of the retreats. And for my part, I like to leave everybody with a little thought that, to see beauty in all things is a choice. Please choose wisely. I'm Millie Pampina. I am your co-guide at Ready Set Reiki. I'm also part of Feather Sister Wellness, and I appreciate everybody joining us today. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my co-guide, Tracy Searight.
Thank you, Pam, again for joining us on Ready Set Reiki. It was truly an honor for you to join us today.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you, everyone, our listeners. If you are interested in one of your questions being featured on our podcast, you can reach out to us at www.readysetreiki.com or find us on social media. And also check out our Feather Sister Wellness, where we have a variety of classes from yoga, Reiki, meditation, and Reiki training. So lots of things happening on there as well. So I am Tracy Searight, and this has been Ready Set Reiki.